Welcome to Beyond Words Presents. Today I am so thrilled to be here with Ayurveda expert and author of the New York Times best-selling book. I'm so excited about that. And yoga instructor Katie Silcox. Welcome to the show.
Hi, Whitney. So happy to be here with you.
It's so fun to get to say New York Times best-selling author, New York Times best-selling book, because it's so deserving. It's such a fantastic book. And so today we're going to talk about two things that I know a ton of people have concerns about: stress and sleep. You're going to show us how to do some super easy stuff at home that will let us let go of stress, and then also tell us how to sleep like a baby, which I think we could all use right about now. And I just want to let everybody out there watching know that if you do have a question, you can use the Google Hangouts app, and be sure to follow us on Facebook, subscribe to us on YouTube, and also follow us on Twitter. So Katie, my first question for you, and I think a lot of people have this exact question, is what in the world is Ayurveda?
Yeah. Oh, I know. I remember hearing it too myself and wondering what it was and wondering if it was relevant to me. And Ayurveda really is the forgotten little sister of yoga. And yoga has become really popular, as you know, and many of our listeners know, in our world and in our country. But Ayurveda, which kind of always went in tandem with yoga, kind of didn't make the cut. And so I, alongside many other people, and certainly many of my mentors and educators in the past, really are attempting to bring this light of knowledge into the more public realm. And so basically what Ayurveda is the holistic healthcare system that supported the yogic discipline of poses and meditation and really the pathway to enlightenment and knowing who you are and removing suffering. And so they understood that if you were going to do this journey of self-inquiry and self-exploration, it would be of benefit to have a really healthy body and a healthy energy system. And so without that, you can do all the poses in the world, but if you've got digestive issues, or as many of you know, if you try to meditate but you're feeling ill, it's really hard. So Ayurveda literally means the science of how nature behaves, the science of life itself, and how we can align with that natural world in such a way that we can feel good.
Well, and I know that for those people out there who do know what Ayurveda is, that it can be a little bit intimidating, and there's a lot to it, as you say. I mean, yoga is just like one tiny piece of it, and myself, I've just sort of started a yoga practice, and that to me seems it seems rather whole in and of itself, and so I'm kind of like, oh, okay, so there's more.
Yeah.
So is there an easy way to start getting into it?
Yeah, read my book. Seriously, Whitney, like the reason I wrote this book, I joke with my students, like I wrote this book so that I didn't have to talk about Ayurveda anymore and we could get on to the more interesting philosophy. Not that I don't love talking about Ayurveda, but really it is intimidating. And we should say, this system does come from India. It's thousands of years old. It's, relative to us in that it's a way of understanding the natural world, and that's inclusive of all worlds, not just in India. We can apply it to anywhere. But yeah, absolutely, it is intimidating because it's basically like saying, so here's yoga, and this can help your back, and this can help de-stress you and help work with your energy. And then there's this other thing called Western medicine that's going to also help you. Western medicine is vast, and it would be silly to think that you could understand all of Western science medicine from one book. And so essentially what Healthy, Happy, Sexy is like a primer. It's like, here are the basic viewpoints of this philosophy, of this system, that will enable you to begin to see how these things are actually happening inside your own body, irrespective of where you come from or what time you happen to find yourself in humanity's evolution. So, and the other piece around that is that even the ancients themselves said this holistic healthcare wisdom has to be adapted to the time and the place and the people in which it is being received. So that really is the intention with this book, is to give it to you guys in a way that feels real and practical.
Well, and I know a lot of a lot of practices that people have that come from very ancient times, sometimes they just get very strict about it. And I love that about your book too. I mean, I'll just show it because it's just so beautiful. And it just, Ayurveda wisdom for the modern woman. And we're so quick to dismiss things that were created so long ago because we're like, times are so different. What would you say is one thing that anybody who's watching this could go and do immediately after this show is over that could kind of start them on the Ayurvedic path, besides going and purchasing your book, of course?
Of course. Yeah, sure. Um, I mean, there's so many things. What I would say, the first way that you can begin to live Ayurvedically is to remember or imagine what life was like for your grandmother or your great-grandmother or grandfather.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not, I mean, some of you could even do grandmother. I mean, I could. Some of you may need to go back to great-grandmother. Think about, some of you could do mother. Think about what that woman ate, because your body is composed of her. It's DNA. This is science, right? We are formed from our lineage. So what your grandmother ate, what she saw, what she smelled, the way she lived, right? Your body will recognize that. So, I mean, it's just a really basic thing. And when I say this to people, they are like, oh, I get it. Because my grandma made chicken and dumplings and corn on the cob and green beans. And my grandma sat on the front porch and, you know, they looked outside at the cars driving by. I mean, that was entertainment, right? And like, so that slow pace and the things they ate, my body does really well with. That's Ayurveda. Now, if your grandma ate corn dogs and, you know, smoked cigarettes and was a go-go dancer, you may need to rework the metaphor a little. But I think you're getting the point that it's not far away. It's right here. It's like, what did my ancestors do? And I think what's occurring now is like change is happening so fast. Like what we are being exposed to in the last 50 years took our ancestors thousands and thousands of years to experience. So that one thing can really bring you into balance. And I mentioned food. Food is the #1 way, with the exception, I would say, of chilling out, like calming down. Food is really what people constantly skimp on. So we can go in more into that, but I guess if I chose one thing, it would be that.
Well, and that's fascinating to me because I'm half Chinese, and when I think about my grandmother was born in Beijing, China, and that's where she grew up until she met my grandfather. And I guess I've always kind of related to that as their lives and just how they lived, and that's it. And now I'm here in America. My dad was raised very Western, and then of course, you know, I'm pretty much, you know, suburban white kid. And I don't relate to the fact that my heritage is Chinese, except for when people look at me and look at my eyes and say, you look a little strange. What is that? I mean, they don't say that, but exactly. I get a lot of, what are you? And to start thinking about what she ate and how she lived, and it was a completely different world.
Yeah, and she and your obviously other grandparents like formed your cellular structure, and not to get woo-woo, but like also your emotions. And you know, so a lot of the work we do in the yogic path is the awareness, the self-knowledge, and going back and understanding the way that even her belief systems formed you. And that's a part of Ayurveda. It isn't just about diet, lifestyle, natural rhythm, sleep, sex, all those things that it is about, but at the end of the day, Ayurveda is about self-awareness. Why do I choose the foods that I choose? Why do I choose to go to bed when I know that, you know, late, when I know that might not be good for me? Why? You know, and if I can understand why, I can shift the decision making. Mm.
Well, and you mentioned that we were going to talk about food some more, and I know that people out there are just chomping at the bit to figure out, what is this food thing? How do I relate to food in a way that is actually helpful for me?
Yeah.
Um, and you say the three pillars of life are food, sleep, and bramacharya.
Yeah.
Bramacharya. There
Bramacharya.
it is. And it's in the description of your show. So can you just really quick let us know what is bramacharya?
Yeah. Well, we could say food, sleep, and sex if we wanted to keep it simple, but that wouldn't be the perfect translation of that word. Brahmacharya literally means to walk with God. And so it was a word that that gave the connotation of I want all of my energetic expenditure to be aligned with my highest purpose.
Hmm.
That may be, and the reason we say sex is because the ancients were kind of like really hip. They understood that all energy is sexual energy. Life itself is this creative force, you know. And so I want to conserve, preserve, and channel that life pulse, that creative, one could say sexual, although it has nothing to do with sex, energy in the best way possible for my highest goal and purpose. So sleep, food, and we could say our relationship to our own creative energy and how I'm using it and how I'm leaking it. You
Hmm.
know, like we're all leaking it. And so Ayurveda and Tantra and yoga teach us how you're leaking it, how to stop and plug up the holes or open them up if they're plugged and they shouldn't be plugged, right? And conserve it so that when I need that energy to, for example, write a book or have a baby or start a business or quit my job, but whatever I need to use that energy for, I've got it.
Well, and it's fascinating to me because the way most people relate to food and sleep and sex is that, you know, I'm just going to eat whatever's there because I'm too busy, my life is too full, so I'm just going to eat whatever, and then I'm going to get only as much sleep as I absolutely have to in order to be able to function. And so it's like,
Yeah.
okay, can I survive on 4 hours a night? Yes, I can. So I'm just going to keep going that way. And then sex, it's like, well, yeah, it's nice when it happens, but like once you're married or if you're super, super busy, they're all three things that fall to the wayside very quickly,
Right.
almost the first things.
Not when you're my man. Yeah. And like they should be the things that are the most important, and we're working only to support how we can make those things so great. Relationships, enjoyment, food, and rest. I mean, we've got it all wrong, Whitney. I mean, look at animals, with the exception of like the hummingbird. You know, everybody out there who's an animal is chilling a lot of the time. And we think we're so evolved, and I mean, we're working our buns off. And so, yeah, it definitely is like a radical macro perspective, but the changes we can make can be subtle. And those changes can build up over time to create really big differences. I mean, if you came, my students and friends, like they all, I'm just gonna be honest, they all try to come stay with me. Like they all want to come visit because they know when they come to my house, they're gonna eat really well and they're going to have to go to bed when I do because I'm kind of mean when it comes to sleep. I'm like, 9 o'clock, there's no screens in my house allowed, you know? There's nobody's kicking it and hanging out. Like we're shutting her down because that I want to be aligned with my mother nature. And that's what animals are doing. That's what the creatures are doing. And I am one of her creatures. And so it's humbling ourselves to those rhythms and to those needs. Elsewise, she will kick my butt. Some of us are more sensitive than others. You know, I can't get away with anything. Some of us have more strength and resiliency and can push the envelope further. But if you're blessed to have my little sensitive belly and heart, you can't mess around. You know, you got to really be in tune with her. And I think it's all of us. We do.
Yeah, and how do you know if you are or if you aren't? I mean, I know straight up I don't even have to look. I'm definitely not because I look and see what I eat, how I am within relationships, and then also the amount of sleep I get. Like those three aspects, I can tell I'm a little far from it. But what are the things that we should be looking for that are sort of the red flags?
It's a great question. And again, it comes back to self-awareness. I work with women and men a lot one-on-one, and we go through all these things, and I ask them questions about all these things, and there are questions about gross things like going to the bathroom and menstruation. I mean, I don't think these are gross, but it's things that people aren't used to talking about candidly, and I'll say, but we're going to talk about that on Beyond Words Presents here today. But I'll say, so how are your bowel movements? And they'll say, normal. Yeah, normal, normal. And I'll say, okay, what is normal? And they'll say, oh, well, I'm going, every other day, more or less. That is not normal. It's not. It's common, but that doesn't mean that it is healthy. So what I say to them is, how does that make you feel? And some people know, right? But a lot of people are not even aware that that isn't normal. So self-awareness is the first thing. Look for the imbalance in your digestive system first. Are you going to the bathroom daily? What's it like, right? And, we won't go into specifics around what's normal with that, but whether or not usually if you spend some time getting real, if that's in balance or not. The second thing we look at is our mind. So there's two places, the digestive system, where disease shows up first, the digestive system, and then the mind. So like, what's going on? Do you have a wallpaper of anxiety that's your normal? That's like everybody, Whitney. Everybody, including me. Like, anxiety is the new normal. That's not normal. Depression, the new normal. 75% of people on some form of, drug. Not normal. Scary. But no problem. We're going to, I believe and I hope that we're all in the precipice of a big shift. But those two realms, Mama, digestion and the mind. And if you have loose stools or chronic constipation and on and on and on, the litany of digestive issues, or low level to high level anxiety, depression, any of the variations on those, I would say those are an indication that the three pillars aren't steady. Sleep, food, and sex. But the good news is you don't have to necessarily go get a pill. If you balance out sleep, food, and sex and relationship and use of energy, really, if you make those a commitment, you will see. You won't need any. You won't need to.
Well, and it just brings to mind, and I know, is that if you want to find out how to get the perfect poo, it is in this book. You can go in here, and she describes it in detail. It's very clear, and it gives you steps on how to get there. So I just wanted to take this moment because I know that that's in here, and I love the fact that it's in here. You can get this as well as an audio download meditation from Katie, and you can get it for $13. It's a crazy cheap price, $13. The book itself is already $18.99, so this plus the audio thing for $13 is just a deal. So you can get that at beyondword.com/Silcox, SILCOX. So be sure to go and grab that. And Katie, one of the things that we were talking about before we started is that there's different Ayurvedic mind and body types, and that there's different things that come because of that. And so I'm sitting here thinking about my last bowel movement. Strange thing to be thinking about on air, but and I know that it probably wasn't normal, although I probably would have said it was normal. I also kind of dismiss the weird ones. I'm just like, yeah, whatever. It's just for right now. And I'm curious if there's something specific to me or to people that we should be watching for and working on.
So I think it's kind of two different things then. One is that Ayurveda divides the world up into 5 elements, from heavy and gross, not ew, gross, just heavy and dull, to very, very subtle and light. And so it's earth, water, fire, air, and space, from gross to subtle. And so you, me, everybody watching, and everything that exists, like even this teacup, is a unique combination, a percentage, if you will, of those 5, one could say, metaphorical qualities, although they are real in the material world. So when you were born with a unique Whitney amount of those 5, and we call that your dosha. And a dosha is a tendency. It's interesting. You could kind of define it as your particular tendency towards chaos.
Okay.
My particular tendency towards chaos might look like fear and intensity and heated digestion. I'm not talking about myself. Yes, I am. I'm teasing. Yes, that's totally me. Yours might be more, and I don't know you, but just even looking at your constitution from your face, you have more qualities of earth and water, right? And so your unique expression of chaos may look a little different. This is just going on basic stuff that you were born with. But the problem is that then this thing called my life happens. And you may be more of an earth water gal, but, and I don't know you at all personally, Whitney, but let's just say someone, through some trauma or through some heartbreak or through a particular tendency, like let's say you were a truck driver and driving, or an air flight attendant, very good example, where I'm constantly moving and I'm constantly in the air, and let's say I also have gone through some trauma, that could create an air imbalance. So I could be this steady earth, water mama, but my lifestyle has created an imbalance in the energy of movement and change and instability. So what we kind of have to do as individuals is to understand the nature not only of who we are when we were born, but perhaps even more importantly, currently, what's going on with us now. And I'll tell you, in everybody, it's air. You, me, and the whole country, because this is the energy of freneticism. It's the internet. It's flipping from one website to the next. It's information overload. So the people that I meet, it doesn't matter what their body type is. Almost everybody is suffering from at least a mild form of an imbalance of air and a lack of earth. Which is why you like that picture on the back of the book where I'm hanging out in nature. That's an earthy thing to do. You know. So back to your question about digestion. When I have a bowel movement, I can see that reflected in there. You know, if I really study it, and if I have loose stools, for example, it could mean a number of different things. One, it could mean that I've eaten too many hot, spicy things, so I have excess fire, and the body's attempting to cool me off by, there's too much fire, and therefore it leaves me very quickly. But it could also be that I have too much air, and what air does, and remember, it could be air in the mind is worry, anxiety. Air in the belly, and they're related. Science is proving this. Air in the belly is dryness. So what happens in your colon when it squeezes up and constricts and dries out or gets anxious? It holds. And so constipation is a condition of too much air. This is why when you travel, you get constipated. You're not in your normal routines. You don't feel relaxed. You've been moving and traveling. So there's so much to learn, right? But once you learn the principles of how these 5 elements behave in the world, then you can look at yourself and go, oh, okay, this is what's happening. I understand that more.
And so just based on what you've said in that I'm earth and water. If there's somebody who has air, who is air, was born with air in their would they be less affected by what's happening?
No, more.
Oh, okay.
Lucky you that you have a little bit of fire. You have a fire, or you wouldn't be able to have your job. But like earth and water people have it easier in some ways on the planet right now because it's not off topic. It may sound off topic, but it's not because it's so important. The world right now is they're now like coming to an understanding of certain types, mind-body types exist. Like even we have it in the fitness world coming through in terms of like endomorph, ectomorph, mesomorph. But now what we're also starting to see in the realm of neuroscience is that people's nervous systems and brains are actually different. Ayurveda knew this thousands of years ago. And so they said this person is an air person. Their tendency, because their nervous system is wired differently than a water or earth type, their tendency will be to feel this when they are imbalanced, but their gift will be sensitivity, all right? And like, it's very stereotype, but the jobs that those people were good at were things like artist and healer and priest and priestess and thinker, and we would take care of that, right? And now they're showing there's a whole thing called highly sensitive people, and it's an actual proven thing that 20 to 25% of the population is highly sensitive. This may or may not have to do with body type, but there is a correlation for sure. And so if 20% of the population is highly sensitive, then that means that the other 80% aren't as much. We could even go so far as to say that, let's say 25 to 50 aren't very sensitive at all. So that we have to cater to that 80% in terms of our technology and our media. So technology and media are designed to stimulate the 80%. And look at what's happening on TV. It's just one screen flashing after another. Same thing with the internet. Now people won't even read articles online. Now you have to just blurb, right? This is an air nightmare. So if you're highly sensitive, I mean, I am. I cannot watch television. I would need to like go take a nap. You know, so all this to say, no matter what your mind body type, currently our culture is bombarded with stimulation, and that's having a negative air effect on everybody. And then you get insomnia.
Yes, lots of cases. There've been more people recently than it seems normal that have been telling me that they can't sleep, they're having trouble sleeping. Even my grandmother, she's having trouble sleeping.
Yeah.
But I guess the thing that's fascinating to me and that I'm just really grappling with right now in my head is the fact that it all starts with the body. And I have in the many things that I've gone through, and I've talked about this a lot on the show, and just sharing that I've gone through a weight loss journey and that I have gained back a lot of that weight and all of the stuff that comes with that. I have never related to my body as something that gives me things. It's always the thing that this sounds terrible, but the thing that I'm trying to beat into submission almost.
Yeah, and it's brave of you to say that. But you're expressing a sentiment of most women and men. Yeah.
Yeah.
So what Ayurveda would say, this is going to make your heart melt, mama, is that the body and the mind aren't connected. The body and the mind are the same. So what you do to one immediately is happening to the other via the gateway of prana, which is energy. Energy is like the mediator between the thinking mind and the matter of the body. And so she is like, I call it a she is just like constantly sending the messages from your conscious and subconscious to the body. So what you do to one, you do to the other. So it creates this feedback loop where if you're beating the body into submission, then the mind's going to become more of a slave driver. It's just like this endless thing. Yeah. But the deeper question and what I am so passionate about, and we go into this a little bit in the book, but what I teach is emotion processing, and processing via the body's sensations and the flesh itself. And so the root of the root has nothing to do with I'm eating too much tonight. The root is I am not allowing myself to feel something.
Mm-hmm.
Always. Always. It's never not that. And so what I teach and I try to do for myself is it's just really simple. This is Ayurveda. I put my hand on my heart and I'll just be like, all right, what do I need? What do you need? What do I need? And that's called the miracle moment. Because when I do that, I just start crying. Or I hear, you need to rest. Or why don't you go down and lay down and do a meditation? Or why don't you call your mama? She loves you. Never do I hear, you need to binge watch Mad Men and eat a whole pizza. Like, I rarely hear that. Sometimes I do. But I rarely hear that. Yeah. And that's what the thing is to get in touch with your soul. Mm-hmm. And she's so much nicer to you than you ever are to you. That's Absolutely. How you know you're in touch with your soul, because she's so much cooler and funnier and nicer than you are to you.
Well, and I know that the language that goes through my mind is exactly what you're saying. It's like, I ate too much. I ate the wrong food. This is going to make me feel gross. This is going to make me gain weight. This is going to make me unattractive. I mean, like, the list, I'm sure I am not alone in this, and I'm sure there's many, many, many more that I could add to that. But like, that is immediately what goes through my mind if I sit down and I have a small bowl of ice cream. Even that is just immediately goes to, this is bad and wrong and I shouldn't be doing it.
Yeah.
So then I eat more.
Exactly. And the false messaging, I think I mentioned this in the book, Whitney. When I was a little girl, my mama took me to the Weight Watchers. Then I got the Susan Powter videos, Stop the Insanity, in the 1980s. This was just like the height of the aerobics weight loss craze. And I was a little chubby girl. And that chubby girl still lives inside of me, and she's the one that is like, wakes up in the morning and remembers what she ate the day before and decides whether or not she's good or bad and worthy of living the next day based on what she ate the day before. You know what I'm talking about?
Absolutely.
Yeah. And then guess who's running the show? Like, chubby mean girl is running the show. And so I think that it is just so the experience of so many of us. And I really feel, not completely, but pretty close to being healed isn't the right word, because like Chubby Bunny, I call her, will always be around, and like now she's kind of welcome. And as I told you before we started the call, like every now and then I indulge her and eat a whole pizza. She'll always be there. But Ayurveda and yoga healed this, because what the problem isn't that I'm eating too much. The problem isn't even that I'm being mean to myself because I did eat too much. The problem is underneath. And underneath that, there's something that's going on about worth, beauty, how I see myself, and where did that come from, and the messaging, and all of that. And when you go into that route, the food thing disappears.
That would be amazing. And the whole topic of what we're talking about is about stress and sleep, and the level of stress, I'm thinking about it, and it's just like the level of stress that I have and so many people have around food is amazing. And I don't think we even think about it. Like, we don't relate to it as stress. It's just, oh, I ate badly, or, oh, look, I had a salad and I didn't really like it, so I want something else. Or it's just, it's a constant dialogue in our brains that adds to that stress level.
The ancients say the first spiritual yoga, the first spiritual yoga is the yoga of food. Food sadhana. Sadhana means practices. If you don't have food practices in order, forget about everything else. Like, I think we don't give it enough love and attention, and I think there's so much stress around it. And I work in the health and wellness industry, and I feel like a rare wolf howling in the darkness, and I'm cool with that because there's so much craziness. Like, open up any health and wellness books, the best sellers, and it's just this litany of science around supplements and food and eat this and don't eat this. And Ayurveda says when life gets complicated, your food practices need to get simple. You know, if your grandma ate it, Michael Pollan, right? If your grandma ate it and would recognize it, you can have it, you know, and eat to 75% full, and then you're done. Like, there's no other thing to discuss. If she wouldn't recognize it, your body won't. And I think it's just really easy. But yeah, there is a lot of stress around it. So step one into healing this stress response is stop. Just stop. Like, it's so cheesy, but it's like, it's actually like kind of a miracle thing. I do this, and I see when I do this, I give permission to other people to do this. It's like, hey, can we just pray for a second? Or you don't have to say that word if it freaks you out. Like, hey, can we just like take a minute to just breathe and set our intention? It may be right before we eat. That's a good time. But like, I just came back from Mexico, and I was with a friend, and I could feel his stress. We were in the car, like a rental car in a foreign country. It's stressful. And I said, can we just stop for a second? Like, before you turn the key and we pull out, can we just breathe? And he's like, yeah, because, you know, he's cool. And he's like, and we breathe, and I said, I just want to state an intention, and that is, no matter what happens today, it's all good. Let's try to do that. Whitney, he turned the ignition, we pulled out, and he immediately, and we were calm at that point, he rammed the tire into the side of the road, and we got a flat. And had to sit in the boiling Mexican sun for hours, right? And we had the best time.
Oh, wow.
If that would have happened, had we not chilled out, we would have had a completely different experience and maybe even trip. So it's just that miracle moment before everything we do where we just get conscious, where we just get aware, and then I eat. And then I make love, and then I write an email. I'm aware, and then I do it.
It's funny because it goes against, again, I mean, it goes against everything that we're used to, where it's the go, 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 get it done, get it done, get it done, get it done. And even a moment, like what you're describing sounds like it takes maybe 30 seconds, maybe.
Yeah.
And even that 30 seconds, people are just, they're very, they hold on to it, and they're like, no, I don't have time to do that. Are you crazy? But what you're describing, I mean, it just completely impacts your life.
Well, it takes a tremendous amount of courage to be in the present moment, because with the present moment, I think there's been a lot of talk in the New Age world about how the present moment is this perfect place where everything's okay. But it's actually not like that at all. The present moment, it eventually is like that. But initially, for us who are beginners, what happens in the present moment? You realize what a nut job you are. You know what I mean? Like, if you ever try just to lay down and not do anything, or sit and meditate, people always tell me, I don't like to meditate because I realize, I don't want to meditate because I start having all these thoughts and it's like I'm crazy. And I say to them, no, you're actually crazy. And when you meditate, you see it. It's not that that stuff isn't there all the time and that when you meditate it's coming up. It's always there. you know, and that's what's affecting our sleep, and that's what's
Mm,
affecting our sex life, and that's what's affecting our food, is that we haven't given ourselves room to process our experience.
absolutely. I'm thinking, and I've been thinking about this kind of thing. I'm so excited that we get to have this time together because it's exactly the experience that I've been having is that there's so many things I've been forcing myself to stop, like go on a walk and not play with my cell phone or call somebody while I go on a walk and just to sit and not do anything.
Yeah,
And I find myself being actually scared in
yeah.
that moment. I'm like, okay, I'm having thoughts and there's lots of thoughts and they're all coming at me and I don't want to have them and I really want to pick up my phone and do something else. And I know all sorts of other people are exactly the same way. I mean, I have friends who watch TV, play on their iPad, and listen to music or listen to an audiobook all at the same time.
And so you have described the essence of vata, air, air and space. And what happens in air and space? You've got movement, and then you've got space is the internet. It literally, it's just outer space.
Yeah.
So that is the opposite of Earth. And babe, it's all going to totally make sense now. Earth is my feet are on the ground, I'm squatting, I'm pulling weeds, I'm gardening, I'm talking to my neighbor, I'm breathing down into my legs, I'm aware of the trees. That's Earth, right? I'm down and out. We don't have that anymore. And so if we don't have Earth, it makes sense that I don't feel safe because Earth is the energy of downward. What are downward? Roots. What do roots do? Make the tree feel safe. So it's like we're all just leaves with no roots. You know, and there are life practices that build earth downward flow energy and water. And if you go to India, and you know this with your background, like China, if you go to these places, their lives suck for so many people. So many people have so much trial and tribulation, and yet they aren't anxious. And you go and you see them, and you know they're sitting by the train station or sitting by the cigarette shop, and they're squatting down on the ground. Or the women, usually the women, are out in the fields pulling and moving with the body and the earth. They don't have anything. They're poor, and yet they don't have anxiety. And one reason maybe that just they're connected to the ground.
Mm.
It's hard to feel anxious when you're rolling around on the ground all day, you know? So even just that, even just thinking about your relationship to earth, breathing down into your legs and your feet as a practice initially is going to feel terrible because it's going to show all the anxious thoughts are going to suddenly come to the surface. But if you keep doing it, they go.
That sounds really exciting
Yeah, we're going to
and
do it after.
simple. What was that?
I said, yeah, we're going to go do it after we hang up. We're going to go breathe down into our legs.
Exactly. Well, and go out and get in the garden and start pulling some weeds.
Totally. That's
Yeah.
anti-anxiety medicine.
Huh. Well, that's definitely a better way to relate to it than I've related to it, which is just annoying. And why won't they all go away? But I just want to mention one more time too that all of the stuff that Katie's talking about, all of these amazing things, they're all in her beautiful book, Healthy, Happy, Sexy. It is a New York Times bestseller. We're thrilled to pieces. And you can get it and an audio download of a meditation for $13. It's just an amazing deal. So go to beyondword.com/Silcox to grab that. And so, Katie, one of the things, so number one, of course, I'm going to go and breathe down into my legs and pull some weeds and connect with that. Um, are you of the world where you would like us to step away from TV and step away from phones and screens and all of those things, or is there a way that we can relate to them in a healthy way?
Absolutely not. I never want anyone to look at a screen. I can't believe I'm even doing this interview. I'm kidding. No, yeah, of course. Like one of the cool things about being the type of yoga that I do is called Tantra, and that just means that like we are of the ilk that you can be fully engaged in the world and with the world with great joy and be on the spiritual journey and become enlightened. And in fact, the most enlightened people I know who are my teachers are the coolest, funniest, down-to-earth beings that have iPhones and watches and cool clothes and, you know, not too many. But so yeah, definitely all these things are good. The internet's good, screens are good. It's connecting us in these new ways. There's beauty everywhere for us. There's intellectual stimulation. We can go to Harvard online. I mean, absolutely. The problem occurs with the imbalance in these things. And so we mentioned in the very beginning sleeping like a baby. And what I would just suggest for people is that they do time blocking. So I'm going to block off these days where, for example, for me, because of my travel and teaching schedule, I'll have 2 or 3 days where I know I'm going to be on the internet a lot. But then you can also have, and then the other days I'm not at all. Or you can do time blocking where you have 3 hours in the morning and maybe 3 hours in the afternoon. Some of you don't need to be on the internet and screens very much at all. It's just become a nervous twitch. So if you're a mom and your job is to raise your children right now and take them around and play with them and be with them, I would say time blocking can be even less. You know, some of us have to work online. But sleeping like a baby is pretty easy if you understand the cycles and the nature of your hormones. So when the sun starts to go down, the body also and the energy starts to go down. That's why we don't want to eat too late at night, because that fire during the day is starting to go low. So I would say just make a time. I think 9 p.m. for me is like the golden rule, although I like to even do earlier, like no more screens after 9 p.m. Also, one huge mistake people make is lighting. If we have all of the superficial lighting on after 8 or 9, that it actually stimulates the mind and it blocks the release of melatonin, because melatonin is activated by nighttime and moonlight. So if you have all these lights on, your melatonin levels get messed up. So have low lighting after 8 o'clock. Just a lamp will do. And that one trick, people start sleeping better. Another thing is to turn off all the buzzing screens. You know, people will have their iPhone beeping. Terrible idea if you want to sleep like a baby. Another thing to consider is like also just keeping the room really dark and quiet. I travel around the country for a living, and one of my challenges is just finding a dark, quiet room in this world. So make sure that's happening, that even if you're not aware of it, having a light anywhere will affect sleep. And then there are beautiful recipes and tonics in my book that will teach you how to make medicinal milks and teas that will help sleep. But most importantly is not to stimulate your mind before bed, and Facebook will do it. You know, obviously the news is, whoever thought the 11 o'clock news, I feel like that they had a really sadistic side, whoever decided that was a good idea. Just don't watch it.
Yeah, both the screen and the subjects will probably wake you right back up.
Right.
Well, I'm so grateful, Katie, for all of this information. And I know the one thing that I've been super curious about is, like, there's this world that you're describing, and actually a world that we are as a whole moving toward. What is the one thing I like to ask this question, but is there something that you feel that is actually detrimental that is getting told to us by what is, you know, accepted knowledge when it comes to health and fitness and just living a happy life?
I don't think that anybody's intentionally saying something that's detrimental. I mean, maybe I'm wrong, but I have kind of a higher vision of all people.
Mm-hmm.
You know, even, I mean, you can watch these documentaries about the food industry and the pharmaceutical industry. You can really start to get depressed. And, you know, so I do think that there are forces in our current cultural paradigm that are not benevolent. And I think that they are localized to, well, not localized, but highly concentrated in the realm of our food system and our healthcare system. And I think that those are areas where I do not have any trust. So if you can take control, responsibility is a better word, of your natural body and its capacity to heal and take care of itself to the best of your ability, because it's now even hard with the food that we're even given, then you won't have to be privy or a slave to those messages in the healthcare system. Currently, a lot of the messages are just to keep the system in perpetuation. And I'm not like a conspiracy theorist, it's just very real. Same thing with food systems, and I think many of our listeners, and Beyond Words, this is an amazing publisher, so people that are interested in these books are privy to knowledge, but many people in our country are not. And so I think those two areas are areas I just don't feel like we can trust on a governmental or a corporate scale. So your healthcare and your food choices have to be you. Like, learn about it, plant a garden, support farmers markets, get with a good naturopath, Ayurvedic doctor, Chinese medicine doctor, support your yoga teachers and your alternative health practitioners, because those are the people that I think are leaning into the wisdom that we can trust, which Ayurveda is certainly one of them. It's a system that loves people, and I'll end by saying, Whitney, and many of my students and friends are doctors, and they're great people. It has nothing to do with the individuals in these systems, it's the systems themselves. But what I really love about Ayurveda is it says, here's how healthcare should be. I just hope somebody's out there listening who takes this and runs with it. I can't do it. It's not my mission. Somebody should do this. Ayurveda says, here's how healthcare system should work. Everybody in the town pays X amount of dollar to our doctor every single month, because that's a good doctor and we want him to live a good life and he studied a lot and we want to make sure he's happy and well off. So we're all going to pay him a certain amount of money. The whole town. He's going to be a wealthy man. Then if one of us gets sick and has to actually go to him or receive health care, during that time that I am ill, I do not pay. So my doctor has an incentive to get me well. Currently, our doctors have incentives to keep us sick. This is what Healthy, Happy, Sexy, my book is about empowering people with the small tools that we have to just stay well. So God forbid we don't have to get in that system.
Well, and I love the relationship that you have to the body, the mind, is that it is whole in and of itself, and that we don't need the drugs, we don't need treatments, we don't need that to have it heal itself for the most part. And there's some loving that you got to do on a regular basis to keep it in a place where it can deal with that kind of thing. And so I think, to me, that it's just so empowering to hear that, and thank you for that. And I'm visualizing a world like that, and it would be incredible.
Yeah.
So somebody who's listening, please do. Yes.
Yeah, take it. Well, it's already happening, and I think it's important to mention too, there are times when Western pharmaceutical allopathic medicine is so healing and wonderful and can help people. It's not either this or that. It's about our current model humbling itself to learn the model of the ancients and use and grow. It's about humility, and the current system has very little humility. So we on the other side who are we're just attempting to communicate, and I think that's where the healing can begin, when technology and science and spirituality and the natural world being like God, therefore we have to take care of it, then we're going to all click into gear. And if not, we'll just have to all die off and start over. But Let's hope not.
So read Katie's book or we'll all die off and we have to start over. No. Well, again, Kate, that's fantastic, and I'm really excited actually to go home and share what you said with my husband, because my husband is very much a Western medicine was created for a purpose. It's here. We should use it, and it will save us from everything. And I'm more leaning toward the Ayurvedic method, and whether I know it or not, I actually am in what you've described. So it'll be an interesting conversation.
Great. Yeah, tell him it's about both. Yes and.
Yes.
Yes and.
Yeah, we're so quick to choose one or the other.
No, listen. If I break my arm, I am not calling an Ayurvedic doctor to give me some turmeric. I'm not doing that. Like, we need both, and we need each other. It's like the feminine and the masculine, the yin and the yang, the intellect and the heart. We need both, and we need to value them equally.
I think that's just, it's a great lesson for everything and everything that you said, and I just thank you so much for being with us here today. And I just want to mention one more time and hold up the beautiful book because I love it, that you can get it at a great discount, and you can just go to beyondword.com/Silcox and grab that for yourself. And I know I'm going to give this to my mother-in-law I mentioned before, because I think that it's an amazing thing. Like, as soon as you say sexy, it automatically has us think of a younger demographic. And one of the things that you say in your introduction is just that when you were speaking with a woman in India that in her 60s, she just was oozing, like she was just super sexy. And I'm like, that would be an amazing gift for any woman who has just given up on that.
Yeah, and that's why, we really went with that title intentionally. And I think there's a backlash in the spiritual and the yoga community against sexiness. And this is just silly. We want to feel sexually alive and vital. We want to feel sexy because sexuality and vitality is the essence of living, and you can have it when you're 90. It just means, hey, I'm alive and I'm creative. And one thing I would like to mention, if you don't mind, Whitney, if people are wondering how they can also hang out with me in person, the bulk of my work is in real life, and they can go to my website. It's just katiesilcox.com, and I'm kind of all over the country doing these events where we actually go into this inside the body in a very real way, so they can check that out as well.
And not just the country, but the world. Like Mexico, I know you're going to Nicaragua. That just your travels and your teachings are needed and called for all over the world. So I'm waiting for you to come to Portland.
I am coming to Portland.
Aha!
A woman sent me an email a couple months ago where we've set it up, so it won't be till 2016, but I am coming to Portland.
And I will be there.
Awesome.
Well, thank you so much, Katie. This has just been an amazing hour. I really appreciate your time and your passion and just your love for people. Like, it's infectious. So thank you.
Well, and thank you for all your help with the book. She's not mentioning it, but Whitney's been a big player in this happening, so I appreciate it.
You're so welcome. Well, and so everybody who's watching knows I'm also very excited about the next show that we have coming up on July 1st. Jasmine Beckett Griffith, she's a very well-known artist. She's going to come on and talk about her process and possibly even draw me. So it'll be a really fun time. So be here, same time, same time, same place on July 1st. Thank you so much, and we will see you again soon. Thank you, Katie.
Thank you. Bye.